This is Ivan Temokov here on the Human Business Narrative Podcast. And today I am joined with my very good friend, Amber Feld. How are you, Amber?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. First of all, thank you for jumping on the podcast with me and on the video show as well, because, you know, it's really cool how me and you connected on social media. And while this is still fresh in my mind, I really wanted to have you on the podcast because, you know, you're one of those people that I think the podcast, the sole purpose behind the podcast was started. With that being said, you know, tell us a little bit about you, you know, your background, you know, what were you into? What do you do? I mean, how did you get to where you are today?
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And how I got here was, it all started 4 years ago. As a stay-at-home mother, I wanted to continue my education. I was doing some schooling for business, and I also got involved in a direct sales company called Unique. It's based in Utah, and it's actually a company with a foundation for survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And so I learned how to brand myself as far as not the product, but people want to know who you are as an individual. And I grew my social media audience from 0 to about 3,000 in 1 year. And then moving forward, I have 10,000 followers combined throughout social media platforms that involve entrepreneurs, business people, public influencers. And I basically took my business background and as well as my direct sales background, and I actually just wanted to share my mission and my story.
Very cool. Very cool. So that's your background. That's your story. So what are you doing today in terms of, you know, what are you focusing on today?
Oh, well, right now I am helping families who are currently on government assistance and teaching them how to build their personal brand, and as well as social media marketing skills.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. You know, I when me and you first connected and kind of started chatting on Facebook, which was, you know, it's such a small world. And this is what I love about social media is that, you know, you can impact one person, right? And that just one person can make such a huge difference in your life. And that's exactly what happened is I think out of the blue, it was either me or you, received a friend request, and then we connected and we started chatting, right? And from there, you know, after we talked a little bit, you know, I found out about your background. But a couple of things you didn't mention is this, you know, how you got to what you're doing with social and marketing. And I want to make sure that you give you the reins in that, and to make sure you tell people on this podcast, you know, how you got to working with guys like Grant Cardone and, you know, some of these big names. And, you know, because I think it's important to understand the human-centric approach to business and kind of what you talked about with your story and having that passion and commitment that led you up to here. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I sure can. So how I got involved with Grant Cardone was I basically learned about him when I was first starting out with my direct sales online. And I really liked his authenticity and also his drive. And what I took from him was, your past does not define your future. And for a long time, I would carry my past with me, and I was able to overcome so much, you know, things that I was going through based on, you know, listening to his YouTube videos and mentoring. And I was able to go to 10X Growth Conference in March, and that changed my world. I went from being an introvert to being my true authentic self. Learned how to network in person. You know, as a survivor, I was afraid of meeting people, traveling alone, things like that. And that whole conference just led up to what I'm doing now as far as, you know, I put in, you know, a couple of years of helping him share his content out. And I've helped, you know, a lot of people understand who he is. And that's what I've learned is, you know, you could build yourself up in your personal brand by, you know, being like a micro influencer and learning from those your empire, your tribe through, like-minded individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of teach that to some people who are trying to figure out where do they start. Instead of just randomly adding someone, I found you through a group, through like-minded things and entrepreneurial work.
Yep.
And it all started with Grant Cardone, though, and I give thanks to him. And I currently work with Les Brown. I do some sales for him, and I also am a part of a company right now with Kevin Harrington and Forbes Riley.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really great thing for business owners and entrepreneurs who need capital and funding. And it all started by just going to Grant Cardone's conference and building that confidence and self-esteem, putting my past behind me and moving forward. And that's what led me to go to a free conference in Utah, where I spent 8 hours with Kevin Harrington and got to pitch in front of him my mission. And I've been in that situation where there's so many women at home who want to do more, who want to be off of government assistance, but not sure of how to do that. So I figured out a way to work with these influencers via online and help them either, do sales for their conferences or seminars, or to help them through personal development and mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I didn't want to steal your thunder on that at all. And that's exactly what I was looking for, is because I think it's absolutely intricate that you shared all this information as part of your story, because it ultimately led you to connecting with some of these very powerful players in business. And these are essentially people that are no different than you and me. I mean, these are people that started somewhere. And the quote that you mentioned, which, by the way, I'm going to caption in this podcast, is your past does not define your future. Because that's such a powerful quote. Let me elaborate a little bit upon that, why I see the irony in that is because as someone who is an Eastern European, someone who was bullied as a kid, someone who had a cultural barrier, who had a language barrier, I always thought that, my past defined my future, that who I was, that I couldn't be someone great because of the past that I had, because as if this was a predefined path that I would walk on. And that's not it. Something that actually talking about Grant Cardone that I want to add upon this quote is this: that I was watching a video of his not too long ago, and he said, my daddy didn't earn six figures, so therefore how could he teach me on earning six figures? So the point behind this is that, if you want to be successful, surround yourself with people who are successful, who are wealthy, people who have paved the path, people that can help you find your own path or can uplift you. And I think in today's day and society, I think a lot of people misconstrue that. I think there is so much in people that, people are very pretentious because they're afraid. Also, we're talking about women, which is great. I think it's absolutely important to empower women because, I think over the last 50 years or so since, women's rights and the right to work and all of that, we've seen this huge shift. And there's so many powerful women like you who have so much to offer, that can impact the world in a positive way or contribute to the world and be able to fulfill your dreams. But I feel like we live in a day and an age where everything is just so predefined. Like if we don't act in a certain way, if we don't look in a certain way, if we don't behave in a certain way, and that's, to me, is kind of a very scrutinized world that we live in. So talking about this quote and when Grant Cardone, the fact that, you found the confidence, self-confidence is, one of the hardest things to find for anybody. So the fact that you were able to find that and then exercise it, know what to do with it, was probably one of the most powerful moves that you've done in your entire life. Which leads me to the question that I want to ask you is, so what really drove you to do, the social and the marketing stuff that you're doing today? Did you have a plan when you started out, or was this just an intuition and a gut feeling?
Well, to add to that, I learned about abundance and the law of attraction. Some people understand what that is, but a lot of it is all about your mindset and knowing that you deserve it. And that's something that I took, I asked myself, why am I in this situation? Why am I why do I have 2 children on government assistance?
Yeah.
What is this purpose? Why am I going through this? And instead of seeing the downside of it, I said, there's a positive to this. There's something to learn from this. What can I do in my situation? And I've heard by many mentors that you start and plant yourself wherever you are, whatever resources that you have, utilize them. And so that's what I had was through social media, and I wasn't really great at video. I feel a lot more comfortable doing this, and this is something that is a step forward for me, is to do a podcast on video. And I'm just thankful to have this experience with you. But I learned that I need to commit to myself, celebrate myself, and to forgive and invest in myself. And so that's what I've learned by doing the social media. And several people have said, just share your story. If it's just one life that you can change, that's all you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. The things that you just mentioned, especially with social, is that's exactly what social media has done. To kind of touch upon it, is that it has given people a voice. And I think that there's 2 sides of that. Like they say, it's a dual sword situation. It's a catch-22, because on one side is you have people who are very expressive, for the right reasons, and on the other side is people who are taking social media to scrutiny, basically. And I think that's why there's ups and downs with social media. But in the grand scheme of things, that's exactly what social media was intended for, is to be able to forge communities. And by forging communities, it has allowed people like you, to reach people that, you otherwise wouldn't have been able to. I mean, prime example is, you kind of talked about this. One of my prior guests was Elena Cardone, who's the wife of Grant Cardone. And I happened to reach out to her on Twitter. I just reached out to her and, said, hey, I would love for you to be on my podcast. I think you are such a huge inspiration for women around the world. Not because you're married to a business mogul, but because you have a reputation, you have a brand around you. And a lot of women appreciate that. And that was exactly what I was striving in that podcast. What's really interesting behind that, Amber, is that after I interviewed her, I had at least 3 or 4 people, like some of them were like established podcasters, that would ask me, how did you get Elena Cardone to come on your rudimentary podcast? And I said, look, it's not rocket science, honestly. Like, I feel like, and you know what I can totally relate to what you were talking about earlier in your story, is that as a former introvert, I think I was in the mindset also that I had to live a certain way or live up to a certain standard of people to be able to blend in society. And honestly, a time came where it was like, no, I need to emerge out of this bubble, because literally I live in a bubble. And the reality of things is that, my parents, who are traditional Eastern European, they had nothing better to offer. They offered what they could. And the rest was for me to find out. The rest was for me to explore. So that I can relate a lot in terms of your story. And I think it's important to talk about it, because there's a lot of women out there. There's a lot of introverts out there who, are probably sitting and probably watching this podcast and wondering, well, would I be able to do that someday? Of course, anybody can. All you got to do is, you got to find that drive. You got to find that passion and what it is that pulls you in. And I think for you, it was social and finally realizing that, look, I'm not an introvert because people have labeled me to be an introvert. I'm an extrovert because I have the confidence. And it was the people, I think Grant actually said, is that most people are the sum of 5 people around them or something along those lines. Yeah. And it really makes you who you are. So like, when I look at the people that I surround myself, I'm like, well, no shit that I'm not successful, because I'm not surrounding myself with people who are.
That's what matters.
Exactly. That's what matters. So that's why I wanted to ask you, like, what drove you towards, what you're doing today, because it also kind of segues into the reason of starting a business. I mean, I know a lot of business owners, a lot of even former bosses, that they didn't start their businesses for the right reason. I mean, they started it for a lot of rudimentary reasons. Like maybe they got fired, or they woke up one day and thought, hey, I'm going to own a company, or I want to own a company, which some reasons are valid and some not so. Simply because I think I was reading something recently that was talking about, who the successful entrepreneur is. And what contributes to building a long-term business. And one of those things is, if you find something that you're capable of doing every day for the rest of your life, to where you get up every day and you don't feel like it feels like work, then that's your passion. Excuse me, that's your calling. That's what you were meant to do. And the most successful person is not one that thinks about how much money am I going to make today, or how much business am I going to close, but they just go out and do what they enjoy doing, because that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, is to having the flexibility of that. So let's talk a little bit, like, what are you currently doing right now in the moment? Like, what things are you focusing on? Like, what's interesting you?
Well, right now that you talked about, it's always, in the beginning, hasn't been about a paycheck, and it was all about long-term legacy for me. And also, my dad passed away when I was 12, and so I have that passion and fire in me to, show gratitude for this life. And that's kind of what struck me to, help myself get to where I'm at, because I truly believe that sometimes we do forget our self-worth based on the people who we are around. Mm-hmm. And I did have to surpass a lot of people and, not continue to communicate with them. And for 2 years, I didn't have a single friend to talk to. And I was going through, postpartum depression, and I was hospitalized for it. And when I got out, I just said, you know what, it's not me, it's something around me. It's something that I can change within myself, but there are things that are triggering these emotions in me. Mm-hmm. And right now, I'm just focusing on building relationships, and as well as finding a bigger platform for me to be able to have a voice, and be able to be a voice for women who are struggling with being quiet, or feeling like their story doesn't matter. Yep. And it really does. Your story is who you are. And building a personal brand is not just, having a pedestal for me. A personal brand is being able to share a story, and that story is very important. Right. Everybody has a purpose, and with that story, there comes a mission for you to serve others. And so right now, like I said, I'm working with Kevin Harrington and Forbes Riley in a company that helps and allows business owners to be able to find their dreams, their dreams. And right now, it's all about just finding those people that need help, and as well as just connecting with people. And a lot of people feel like, how do I tell my story without feeling embarrassed, ashamed, or focusing on the past? And that has been my issue. Like, how do I express my background and my biography, but without focusing on that, because we want to focus on the present moment and what can we do right now. And I'm just basically going through the process and enjoying that process as, personal developing myself and meeting people like you.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head there. And one word that came to mind, so we're talking about the development of your personal brand also. I think one of the things that is very unfortunate about today's day and age that we live in is that we're very judgmental, and that's our human trait. We really are. I mean, we are judged literally the second that, we have an interaction with someone else. We're judged on the way we look, the way we talk, the way we dress. We're judged on our income. We're judged on how big of a house that we live in, the kind of car that we drive. And it's very, very unfortunate, and the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think it's important for anyone who is successful in business is to be very pursuant and diligent in building their personal brand without worrying about, as they say, the haters or the naysayers. Because there's always, something I could totally relate is that, I don't surround myself with a lot of people, and there's a reason why. It's because a lot of the people that I was surrounding myself with also were very negative. They would constantly question about, well, what kind of a salary are you making, or what kind of a job do you work, or when shit was to hit the fan, then, why aren't you, they'll be skeptical rather than being an opportunist, right? That would rather than being optimistic, So I quickly realized that it's a change of mindset. And to be successful, like what you said, is you literally have to change your mindset. I mean, that's what it takes. And, changing that mindset sometimes takes time. I mean, a lot of people seek spiritual guidance, religious guidance, meditation, even to help them get there, to find that true calling, to change that mindset. And a lot of people, really just kind of take time to themselves, really, to figure out, what it takes to shift that mindset. So I think the mindset is really, really important. And that's a key message here, is because let's look at what guys like Grant Cardone, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, for instance, who's like revolutionizing the automotive industry. What are they, all these people, Forbes Riley, I mean, anybody that has been successful is they have a different outlook. And what I specifically appreciate the most is that the true leaders, because to be a leader, you have to lead by example. And I believe that some of the most successful people in business, they lead by example because, for one, they give you access. That was the beauty about Elena Cardone, is she gave access. Regardless of the things that she had going on, she devoted time. She allocated time to someone who, I mean, she could have easily gone on some podcast that has, 500,000 downloads or whatever, because that would give her a lot more awareness, pique more interest and maybe give her more reach. But no, she gave time to someone like me. So to your point, to resonate with that is just that it's extremely important to create that mindset. Let's talk about women around the world. What are some things let's talk about the few things that you would share with other women that have been in your position, that to help invigorate them so they can find their true calling. What will be some of the advice that you would give to them?
I would tell you that self-love is very important. Before you can love anyone else, you got to learn how to self-love and give that time to yourself and focus on yourself. Like, I had an issue with always putting, family members first, or being like having this habit of having to tell everybody everything what I'm doing right up front, or feeling like I'm keeping something from them. So like when something good happens to you, I've learned to embrace it as much as you can and enjoy that feeling within yourself. Because sometimes when you share things with other people, it kind of like breaks off that energy and that link that is meant for you to feel and discover in yourself. So I would feel like to share that when you do have a success, even if it's really small, like have that moment to yourself and like embrace that feeling that is something that you deserve to feel, and you are allowed to feel good about yourself no matter what has happened to yourself. And for a long time, as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, I have this feeling of like, I can't speak up now because I didn't speak up then. And, a lot of people have told me like, why did you wait so long to talk about it? Well, it's not that, that kind of questioning, that is not someone who cares about you. And if you are going through something and you feel like there isn't anybody there are people out there. And, that's what I took on, is just take time to get to know yourself, so then you know what you want to attract in your life moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very strong key message, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that was probably a very emotional moment, but I think it's really important, because the point you were trying to make is just that, going back to your saying, is this: your past does not define your future, right? So the fact that these experiences and these unfortunate events happen does not necessarily indicate that that's going to be the course of your future, because truth of the matter is we live one life. and we have one shot sometimes, one opportunity to seize the moment. So you have two choices. Is one is a little bogged down in frustration and stress and anxiety, and let everyone else walk over you, and let everyone get to the top before you do, because you think that you're unworthy. Or take the reins of the chariot and pave your own course, right? And follow your dreams and do the things that you should be passionate about. And that's what's really most important. That's one of the things that I really liked about you when we connected, is that I know you have a drive about that, because, as being a survivor, of that, is you understand and you're willing to help other women that are in similar situations. Because the reality of things, sexual abuse and sexual harassment and rape and all of that, I mean, these are very, very, very real problems in today's day and age and society. And I feel like, one of the things that I told you when me and you talked about is my many job titles, and one being a humanitarian. And I think that's really important to recognize, because, I look at true leaders, and, when I look at true leaders, how I guess in essence pre-qualify them is, I look at them, how do they lead by example? How are they bettering the world? Two, what are they contributing to the world, right? And three is, how are they really impacting? Like, what do they have to offer, right? And fourth is, they always give time to people, always, no matter what. I don't care if you're the president of the United States, or you're someone like Gary Vaynerchuk or Grant Cardone. You always make time, no matter what. One thing that blew me away about Gary Vaynerchuk, for instance, is that, and he continues to do this, is that, of course, you're going to have, at first, people are going to hate you, then they're going to try to emulate you, and then they're going to try to copy you, right? One thing that I like about him is that he was willing to set a few minutes aside to talk to a complete stranger, out of the blue. Now, that's a true leader to me, is because regardless of fame and fortune, you'll still find the time, which is something that I made a promise to myself, that if I ever got wealthy, right, and I had like serious money problems, to where like, okay, what's the next boat I'm going to buy, or the next house, because, I just want to splurge or whatever the case might be, is, even though ego, I think, is intricate in business, I would never allow ego to take over me, ever. Because I know too many people in business that they have allowed ego to take over them, and have admitted those mistakes. Because look, I believe ego is important, because you got to, toot your own horn. Nobody's going to toot your own horn, if you don't toot your own, right? Like you said, self-love. If you love yourself, you can't truly love anybody else or care for anybody else. And that's absolutely true in business, right? You got to toot your own horn. And something that Andy Frisella is another guy that I follow. I absolutely love this guy. This is, he's a hometown guy. He's here in St. Louis. Started off Supplement Superstores, First Forum. I mean, he spoke at 10X GrowthCon also a couple of times in a row. The one thing that I love, about this guy is how inspirational he is. And even though he's reached fame, I mean, this guy has a plethora of luxury cars. He's got the house, he's got the business. But this is a guy that was sleeping on a pissed mattress, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, with a potential partner, trying to figure out how to bring this dream to life. So to your point, going back, is self-love, understanding that you got to take care of yourself first and foremost to be able to impact others. Because the most common mistake that not only people, but entrepreneurs and business owners do is, maybe they try to care too much, and they don't take the time for themselves. Because you need to invest in personal development too. You need to be continuously innovating. You need to figure out how, as Gary talks about, execution, how are you going to do things differently than everybody else? I mean, it really isn't a rocket science. I mean, if you do things better than everybody else, over the course of time, you're going to gain recognition. People are going to start appreciating that. And you're going to go through these different phases. Like at first, people are going to avoid you, like we talked about, friends and acquaintances and stuff like that, because they don't have the same mindset. They just don't share the same things. And the unfortunate part is that a lot of us do surround ourselves with those kinds of people, because, maybe we have common interests, or maybe it's family, or it's friends, maybe we went to high school together, or we worked at the same job. But in the reality of things is, do you share the same mindset? Do you share the same big vision? I mean, do you one day, want to have everything? Do you want to have certain things? What are your priorities? So I think that's really important. That's a key message. And that's why I'm spending so much time elaborating upon this, is because I think that a lot of people misconstrue this. They think like, okay, people that start out that have been successful, like Elon Musk or Andy or Gary Vee or Grant Cardone or Elena Cardone, like, someone like, served it for them on a silver platter. And it didn't really happen that way, And I think a lot of people really perceive it that way. That's the unfortunate part. I think society perceives it like, you were served on, I think for a while, Tim Ferriss is another guy in the marketing industry that a lot of people said, well, Tim Ferriss is a trust fund baby, so he never had to worry about money. I mean, he had a bunch of money. He took the money, he invested in the right way, he spent it in the right way, and now he's built a brand. I mean, that's the exception of the rule. The other 99% of people like you and me, we figure out a way how to get to the top. If we want to get there one day, and what steps are we going to take? What's our plan? What's our strategy? What sacrifices you're going to make along the way, right? Me and you kind of talked a lot about entrepreneurship, offline, in terms of what a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand, the sacrifices they have to make. So that's extremely important. So, Amber, this was a really great conversation. You had so much to share, and I look forward to both of us staying connected and figuring out ways that we can potentially work together. With that being said, in closing for the podcast, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to connect with you online?
Well, they can find me on Instagram at 10x Social Media Marketing.
Okay, very cool. Is that the best channel to find you at?
Yes, right now. Yeah, okay. I'm more on there than Facebook.
Right.
But I just would like to end just to inspire that if, as a person who was on government assistance and still has, some financial things going on, that don't make that as your focus. Learn how to increase your revenue by being resourceful. And there are plenty of conferences and networking events in your area that are usually free to $10. Instead of going to McDonald's, just put that away, that money, and go to your next local networking event, and it can change your life. If it changed my life.
Very cool. Amber, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for contributing.